I'm going to ask a couple questions, and then throughout this webinar, invite you to ask questions in the chat roll, and we'll spend as much time answering questions as we can fit in. So at any time, enter your questions into the chat roll. So let's get right to it. So first question for you, Lance. Tell us your story. How did you get involved in microfinance, and what prompted you to want to write this book?
Yeah, thank you. So so I'm a business guy, right? I'm a CPA, and in 2002, I was a partner in a firm, Arthur Andersen. Some of you may have heard. And Arthur Andersen, in like a split second, went down in a giant ball of flames through a scandal related to document shredding and Enron. And I was there with no job and no plan, and just started praying like crazy. And in that prayer, and one question was, I was 42 at the time, was it time to go into ministry then? And I felt God spoke to me, and through the group of people that we had gathered, and said two huge points. The first was, you're a business guy, I made you for business, go to PwC, which was amazing. I didn't have an offer from PwC. Go to PwC. And then also, Lance, stop being stupid with my money. Don't just give to the last person that asked you to give. Use the business mind I gave you to find the highest impact for giving dollars. Do it. And so that was 2002, and that started me, after I got to PwC by the grace of God, on a process of evaluating charities to find the highest impact. And that's ultimately when I landed on Christ-centered microfinance. It still blows my mind. $20, it really changes a person's life forever, and for a year, but ultimately forever. And it's both material, as you guys know, material and spiritually.
Thanks, Lance, and we will dive more into that. But Jen, how about you? What's your story? How did you get involved in microfinance?
Yeah, so it's kind of a two-part story, but I want to spend a little bit of time on how God really shaped kind of my view on charity for me. That's kind of where it started. And, when I was in high school, we would spend time every summer as a high school group going down to Mexico. I live in Southern California, and we're, right across the border. And so we would go down every year for a couple of days, and we'd bring shoeboxes full of toys, and then we would work on projects around the orphanage. So we would paint walls and pour sidewalks and do things like that. And always felt really good driving home. We made that blue wall purple and got a few other blocks of the sidewalk done, stuff like that. And then we'd go back the next year, and we'd see the soccer ball that was in the field that was deflated, and then that purple wall that was mostly done, but not fully done, very well. And then the sidewalk that hadn't been touched. And so I just started developing this view of charity of is this really how it's supposed to be? Year after year, is anything really changing here? And then fast forward, I was in college, and I went on a trip with Habitat for Humanity, actually, to Uganda. And it was a group of people from around the world, and we were building houses for these 3 different families that were there. And the way that Habitat's program works is that the people that you're building a home for actually take out a loan for their home. And so, and these were, we were in very remote rural areas. And so they were, mud brick homes with tin roofs, nothing super fancy or anything, but they, I think, cost around $3,000, and they had to take a loan, and they could pay it back either with sweat equity or with cooking or prepping meals for the teams that were there, and then also making payments. And I remember, working alongside these individuals on their homes, and the level of ownership that they had, and the way that they were just kind of bought into this whole experience, and the pride that they had when we finished. This was their home. They built it. They're paying for it. And I just remember the juxtaposition of those two experiences for me was really profound, because they really were formative for me in how I looked at charity and philanthropy. And so, so I remember then, fast forward years later in my own professional journey, I had really felt, I went into business. God made it very clear I was supposed to go into business, and started to feel a tug towards more traditional ministry, and struggled my way through what that meant, thinking, gosh, I don't know, a lot of nonprofits don't really run very efficiently, and I just struggled with that. And so, again, long story made very short, I ended up on my resume getting very clear on what I wanted to do, and I wanted to work for a nonprofit or a Christian ministry that focused on business as mission, and I wanted to do some kind of relationship management. And so God connected me to Chris Horst. That was a fun story, and I landed it at Hope. So kind of a neat way how God weaves the story together.
Well, we need to say thank you, Chris, then, because that you profoundly impacted Hope in the years that you were here, Jenn. So when we think about microfinance, Lance, it seems like many people come at it with the mindset of the numbers and the efficiencies, and that certainly is where you came at it as well. But what makes this book different is that you tell the story of microfinance in a way that is really focused on kids and children. So why did you decide to tell the story of microfinance in a way that really is centered on the impact on kids?
Yeah, this is interesting. I think it was about 5 years ago, and I'm heavily, like, people call me a microfinance evangelist, right? My kids are tired of hearing about it. And I was heavy into it, and I was driving to work early one morning, and I just had one of those moments. It was 6:30 in the morning, and it was feeling like God was speaking to me, and he was saying, Christ-centered microfinance is about the kids. It's about the kids. And I wasn't connecting those dots too well because I'm not too bright. But ultimately, as I processed that, it became clear to me that this is the best way to help kids. If you only care about kids, Christ-centered microfinance is the way to do it. It's the way God intended to do it, that kids be helped by their parents, that parents take up their kids and model to them how to be the people God calls them to be. And Christ-centered microfinance does that. And I can't help but go back to the numbers piece of it. If it costs, in Hope's annual report, in 2018, it cost $19.37 to keep a person in Christ-centered microfinance for a year. And when you divide $19.37 by the total household size across all of the countries that Hope does business, that's 4.01. 1937 divided by 4.01 is $4.83 to change the life of a kid the way God intended through the parent. It's unbelievable, you guys. It blows my mind. And so ultimately, Jenn and I were having the same kind of aha moment about 5 years ago, and it was that power that ultimately generated the book.
I'll just jump in here real quick too. One of the things that for me, I was in the fundraising side at Hope, as many of you know, and I often got asked about, the impact that microfinance has on kids. It came up frequently. A lot of individuals have a heart for the next generation, and so microfinance serves a lot of adult entrepreneurs, and so I would often get that question. So it was something Lance and I talked about, and it just seems to be kind of this perfect fit. Yeah, let's really focus on and highlight how this amazing work is so impactful for kids.
Thanks, Jenn. And that really is the core of the book. It looks at 10 different ways that microfinance positively impacts children. And so, Jenn, I'm going to ask the impossible here, but in 1 minute, can you give us the 10 ways? And then tell us one story. What is one story from the book that highlights the impact on the next generation?
Yeah, I will tell you the story and the 10 ways. I'm going to flood my way through these. So Selena and Lance, feel free to jump in. Thanks for putting me on the spot, Peter. But yeah, we looked at clothing and healthcare, and we looked at human trafficking, and we looked at medicine. I think that linked to healthcare, and we looked at home improvement, and we looked at the family unit, and basic education, and thriving families as well was the other. I think I got close to 10 there.
Yeah, and keeping kids out of human trafficking, and post-disaster recovery. I think you're getting close to 10.
Yeah, I think we're right about there. But yeah, so I'll tell a quick story. I love the story of a woman named Umatesi out of Rwanda. And it was really fun. I'll touch on this really quick before I go into the story, but we partnered with a bunch of different organizations globally. So Christ-centered finance organizations around the world, and partnered with their staff in many instances to get these stories and to do these interviews. So it felt very personal in a lot of ways, just getting to know the stories of the individuals that we represent in the book. And Umatessi is one of them, and we partnered with Orwego Bank, which I know is part of, Hope's Network as well, and so worked with a gal on staff there to get this story. So kind of fun to see it come to life. But Umatessi was a genocide survivor. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the genocide that happened a little over 25 years ago, in which nearly 1 million people were killed. It was a kind of a tribal war with the Hutus and the Tutsis, and Umatessi had 6 siblings. So her and her 6 siblings were all survivors of the genocide, and they had fled from their home and were living in fields at night, just trying to survive. And Umatessi actually got really sick one night, and they didn't know if she would survive. So her and her siblings were all hiding, and she was just in this situation of trying to keep quiet, but not knowing if she could breathe. And they heard some soldiers approach and kind of thought, well, this is it. And it ended up being the Rwandan Patriot Force. And so they ended up caring for the siblings, took them in, and kind of helped get them back on their feet and reunited with their father. Their mother had been murdered during the genocide, and their father had been really, really badly wounded. But they were able to be reunited with him, and Umatessi kind of became the caretaker for her father for what ended up being about his last year of life. And he had remarried in that time, and so they had a stepmother as well. And but family dynamics were really challenging. And Umatessi's story we tell kind of in the clothing category, because for her, she ended up living in the same dress for about five years or so. And in that time, going back and forth with a stepmother and then an aunt, her and the siblings all faced various levels of abuse, and weren't put into proper schools, and just had a lot of chores to deal with, just a lot of different things that made life really, really, really difficult. And ultimately, Umatessi was able to go to school further away, and she got pregnant and then married very, very young. And her and her husband kind of set up life in a remote village there, and really struggled. She ended up getting sick and having a baby, and then her husband lost her job, and so they just kind of found themselves in this really horrible situation. And then some friends of hers told her about Orwego, and so she learned about the concept of a loan and how to work with a trust group and partner with other individuals in the community. And her husband was super hesitant, didn't want her to participate, but and they ended up moving forward, and she took out her first loan of $112, and she bought 20 chickens. And so they did what was necessary to, take care of the chickens and start growing this chicken business. And it ended up taking off. They took out another loan, bought 100 more chickens, and ended up supplying the local markets with eggs, and then also did some wholesaling as well. So they started working with local hotels and local restaurants. And then they also started reaching out into other parts of their community, and started buying and selling all the eggs from local farmers as well. So they just have built this thriving business. They ended up having 2 more of their own bio children and adopting 3 others in the community, and have just become these pillars in their community. They've built a wonderful home, and all of their kids are fully clothed and in private school. And so the way that they've been able to care for their own children, but then also other children outside of their immediate family, has been pretty profound. We got to see pictures of their egg business, their flourishing egg business. They're producing thousands and thousands of eggs every week. So pretty cool story.
Thanks, Jen. And that, to me, was one of the most powerful parts of the book, is just those real life stories of impact in those different domains and in those different areas. Lance, what else would you add in terms of what you have seen through your study and writing this book? What else would you add in terms of the impact on kids?
Yeah, it's intuitive that when you help the parent, they help their kids, right? It's just the way God played it out. But the question is, what's the proof of that? And in fact, Vision Fund, kind of one of Hope's brother sister entities out there in the world of Christ-centered microfinance, is the brother sister actually to World Vision that does microfinance, has done some huge studies on just this issue. One was in 2017, 119,000 clients. And the other one in 2018 in Myanmar was 89,000 clients. And the question was, they identified areas similar to ours. And by the way, I don't know if we said it, one of our other areas is spiritual growth. That is super important. And another one of our areas is the value of work, that when you're in Christ-centered microfinance, your kids learn that work is valuable. Anyway, Vision Fund had identified these outcomes called child well-being outcomes that a lot of them cross over with our kids' win areas. And they did this study that showed that 99% of the time, when you help the parent, the kids benefit in at least one of their child well-being outcomes. And in a large majority of the time, the kids benefit in multiple areas. Not only that, there's also studies that show that over time, when you stay in Christ-centered microfinance, your kids continue to benefit and the benefit continues to grow. So the proof, it's intuitive, but the proof is overwhelming as well.
That's great. And Jenn, can you share a little bit more about that? Because the book very clearly focuses not just on microfinance, but Christ-centered microfinance. So what did you see? What did you learn about the impact of Christ-centered microfinance as distinct from just other financial service providers?
Yeah, well, I think, and as many of you on this call are really familiar with, Christ-centered microfinance is so much more about just it's more than just about being in the transaction. It's about the heart change, the soul change, what happens when people actually encounter the living person of Jesus, and that changes everything. And so, it changes how people parent their kids. It changes how people interact with their spouses. It changes how people love on their community. It changes everything. And we saw that firsthand in so many of the stories that that are represented in the book. And without even asking, it wasn't even something that we necessarily fished for, but so many people offered that up, just the profound nature of being served by loan officers and staff members and organizations that really focus on the Christ piece was really profound for them. It changed everything. And so we've woven that through the book because it was integral to the stories that were told. And I was actually in Ukraine a year ago or so, getting one of the stories for the book, and spent some time in the Roma community with a guy named Pastor Albert. I'll just tell his story really quick because I think it really highlights, what we're talking about here. But he is Hungarian and, lives in one of the remote kind of Roma communities in Transcarpathia, Ukraine. And he and his family grew up as, his kids and him and his wife were all beggars, and they made their living by stealing and, digging through garbage dumps, whatever they could do to make ends meet. They lived in a really, really small 1-bedroom home. They had 8 kids. So there's 10 of them in this small little home. And one day he came to learn about Jesus. I think there was a local pastor that was going through town or something, and he came to know the Lord. And his wife was kind of like, I'm like waiting for the other shoe to drop, like this, because he stopped drinking, he stopped stealing, he wanted his life to change after encountering the Lord. And his wife was like, yeah, we'll see how long this lasts, kind of a thing. But after 6 months, he was still on the same path and hadn't touched alcohol. And so she ended up coming to know the Lord too. And they ended up getting plugged into a savings group there locally, and everything changed for their family. They started building, they did a scrap metal business, and then he ended up doing some construction work back in Hungary with one of his sons. And then fast forward, he's now a pastor to that community and has this deep passion for other people coming to know the Lord. They've grown the church to about 50 different members in the community. And he just has a heart to see everyone come to know Jesus. And this was amazing to hear the power of his testimony and to see just like really tangible ways that meeting Jesus changed everything for him. And so I think, for us, like that's what one of the things we wanted to represent in this book, that you don't get with, kind of any other ordinary microfinance organization. They're doing phenomenal work, but without that heart change, there's not other change in people's lives that that's transformative in the way that I think you see with Christ-centered microfinance organizations.
Yeah, I just gotta jump into this one too. There's actual proof of this, that there was a study done by of the International Care Ministries, ICM, of 6,200 something folks, and they broke them in that were Christ-centered microfinance in a business sense. They broke them into two groups. One group they gave the spiritual program to, and the other group they gave everything, the spiritual program and everything, and the other group they didn't give the spiritual program, but they gave them everything. And of course, the ones with the spiritual program moved forward spiritually, but they also did better in business. They actually outperformed the group that didn't have Jesus in terms of the income that they produced from their businesses. And this is a randomized, controlled study done by non-Christians. And so the fact is, yeah, it's huge to get people to Jesus, and that's the biggest part of it. But they also outperform in a business sense, which is just unbelievable. When you combine the two, it's more powerful than either one.
Thank you, Lance and Jen. So I have two final questions, and then we're going to open it up and see what questions the others that are joining us. So you can enter them in the chat roll, or you can unmute yourself as well when we get to that point. But the final two questions for me. Lance, tell us a little bit more. How does Christ-centered microfinance keep families together? And then after that, my final question is, you know what's coming. How can we help? How can this group of friends help with the launch? And I'd love to hear both of you, your hopes for the book and how we can help in this launch time.
So one of the stories is about a woman named Martha I and her husband Tune in Ethiopia. And they got married. They were poor, but they had a little plot of land that they farmed in Ethiopia, primarily something called inset, a false banana. And Martha and Tune had 3 kids, and one day Tune got incredible abdominal pain. This place is remote, and so the village elders they took him to a nearby health center. They said, we can't help you. They pooled their money. They got an Isuzu truck, and they took him to the hospital, and Tune died on the way to the hospital in the big city. And Martha was crushed. This was fast. She had 3 kids, including 1 little kid, and she couldn't hold it together. She didn't have savings. There was no microfinance at that time in that community. And Martha and her family wound up starving. What happened was their plot of land wound up being overrun by cattle, and that killed the inset, and she had to beg. And the bottom line is, a year after Tune died, she had to make the hard choice of, do I let my youngest kid die, or do I give him up for adoption? And she gave him up for adoption. His name was Abraham, and our family adopted Abraham, and we continue to be in touch with Martha. And we believe God worked through a terrible thing, but can you imagine the heartbreak of having to choose whether to have your kid die in your family or give them up? It just is unimaginable. And we have reflected on this and really believe that if Martha had had savings, or if she had had even a community around her to get a loan, or even a community around her to create a savings group, she could have weathered this, and it would have turned out different. And so there today are 8 million kids in orphanages. And this blew my mind. We found this out when we were writing the book. Catholic Relief Charities says that 80 to 90% of those 8 million kids have at least one parent alive. And I believe that God's plan would be that if we could come alongside those parents and help them pull themselves out of poverty, the families stay together and the kids thrive. So that's my story on kids thriving.
That is powerful, Lance. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And then last question, Jen, maybe over to you, but what are your hopes for the book, and how can we help in this launch?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. One of our hopes is obviously to shed light on how Christ-centered microfinance impacts families. That's the biggest thing. And so we touch on that throughout like a couple of different chapters in the book about just how we believe that this work impacts readers beyond just getting involved with your giving dollar. And so we're really trying to highlight that for families as well. So just that, the same things that many of the families that benefit from this work overseas are experiencing, they can be experienced here in valuing work, the dignity that's found in work, just the different principles and tenets that Christ Center Microfinance stands on. We want to really encourage families to be instilling that in their own kids and experiencing that in their own lives as well. And so just to have that tie. And so we do have some resources available on our website and in the book for that too. So that is a big hope of ours. We want to shed light on this work. We want people to get more involved in this. We really believe that this is the most impactful way to help children globally. And so want to get the word out about that. And the whole heart of it is really to highlight the work that organizations like Hope are doing. And so the more we can get the word out, hopefully the more the organizations will benefit as a result. As far as how you guys can help, well, we would love for you all to consider if you'd like to be a part of our lunch team. We are in the middle of doing our kind of formal book launch right now. And so, getting a book, they are available on Amazon for purchase as well as on our website. And you can get a Kindle right now, I think for $1.99. I think that's good for the next few days. So that's really helpful for us to have a verified purchase and then to do a review if you enjoy the book. That would be super helpful for us as well. So that's kind of the immediate things that come to my mind. And I think there'll be an email follow-up to this as well with some specific ways to get plugged in. But Lance, anything that you would add?
Yeah, the website is kids-win.com. kids-win.com. Yeah, this is God's message. This isn't our message. It's just our heart to be faithful to it. We really do believe that readers will be impacted. I mean, God's plan is unfolding here. He calls us to step into the plan. And by stepping into the plan, we think people really experience the work God intends for them. And maybe on this side of the ocean, the work is getting engaged in Christ-centered microfinance and getting the word out. And God will bless people through their involvement. And $4.83 is within grasp of regular people to be generous. And the Bible is really clear that when we open our hands and we get involved in generosity, we're blessed. We've all experienced that. And the other thing is that when you kind of get engaged with this and you see how little money makes such a big difference, it causes me to just feel more thankful and to just realize how much I have been blessed. And that changes my heart. And I think the last thing to readers, and there's a little controversy, of course, we're saved by grace, right? We get to heaven through grace. But I do believe that the Bible is clear that we have work to do. As Christians here, we have work to do, and that God will reward us and bless us for engaging with that work, and that there's eternal rewards from getting involved in his unfolding plan.
That's great. Well, I believe I can speak for a lot of people. We are in helping to spread the word and to get this message out. And we will not speak quite so eloquently or passionately as the two of you have done here, but we will absolutely commit to sharing the word with our friends and contacts as well. So the questions are starting to come in. First question is from Chris, and take us behind the cover. What is your favorite and least favorite aspect of writing the book?
I'll start. So one of my favorite things is that we're all still friends. We joke about this often. We've been working on this for like 5 years now. And we all like each other and get along, and that feels like a really big win. But in all seriousness, it's been a total blast working alongside Lance and Selena and the team of people that have helped with this book. So that would be my favorite part. I think for me, one of the least favorite things, it was really hard. I mean, I kind of alluded to it before, but working with different organizations and then working with their staff and then having them go into the field. I mean, even when I was in Ukraine, there was like 3 or 4 levels of translation that had to happen just so I could get notes to then write the story. And so logistically, like there were some significant things that we had to deal with. And, getting stories from someone in Rwanda or in Haiti, and then that being translated and then reading through and then realizing, oh, there's a lot of gaps. Can you go back and get more content? So there was some significant struggles in getting enough content and the right content to really create create the story. So that added to the process, but made it worth it at the end, but was really challenging.
Lance, I want to hear your answer to that question as well. Favorite and least favorite aspect of the book writing process?
It was fun. We had fun. My least favorite is there was something like 17 rounds of new edits, and every time we would even have the advanced copy and we'd review it and we'd find more and more mistakes. It's just I'm sure there's mistakes in it now that we just haven't found. And do you know that you use 3 dots and an ellipse? Is that what you called, Jen? We had 4 dots in our ellipses. Man, you learn things.
There we go. Thanks for teaching all of us about that. 3 dots, it is. Perfect. All right, next question is from Brian. Will you be willing to speak at fall events for Hope this year?
And we love that.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know. Jen's going off and having babies, and I don't know how that fits into this whole thing. But we love the idea of, and maybe fall events, probably fall events are just like this. So we can do this. Jen's planning on having a Zoom from the hospital, actually. And so we're available. We love this stuff. It's God's message, and our part is to get the message out.
Yeah, happy to do that. That'd be awesome. Mm-hmm.
Jen, could I just clarify? Happy to do that. Happy to do from the hospital, or happy to do the virtual events? Just want to clarify.
Yeah.
As you can tell, this would not be nearly as fun without Jen. So whatever we do, she's going to have to be part of it.
Awesome. Great. Next question is from Jeff. Is the Audible version available? And if not, would you be willing to record it in your phone and share the Audible version?
It's not available. It's not available, but we have a plan. So there's a studio and a guy that says he can do it. So Jen and I are going to go read the book sometime. I don't know when.
We'll keep you posted. Yeah.
Jeff, you're a troublemaker, man. You are a troublemaker from the very beginning.
Well, we have just a couple more minutes. Are there any other questions that we would like to ask Lance and Jen?
Yeah, I'll just chime in. I was typing, but I'll just ask here. Hey, Jen and Lance.
Hey, Isaac.
Hey, I'd love to hear just like, what was one surprising thing you learned in the process in terms of impact on kids and families?
I'll tell you mine. Mine is that of the 8 million kids in orphanages, 80 to 90% have at least one living parent. That just blows my mind. I never would have thought about that.
I think for me, it was, I mean, I've been around, stories of this kind of stuff for years and years now, but just the resilience of people globally, it just continues to strike me. And no matter the age, just the different circumstances that kids face and parents face alike, and their resilience to push through hard circumstances and find joy. And it just continues to stun me. So, and really impact me, but yeah.
Lance and Jen, there was so much focus on other people's lives being transformed. How did this transform each of your lives as you just were so in all the transformation you were seeing in many other countries?
That's a good question. Yeah, I can jump in. I think for me, just even on the, what Lance had mentioned before, the things that we conclude with about generosity and thankfulness and eternal reward, it's so easy to get kind of pulled back into normal. I mean, I worked for Hope for a number of years and then worked in a for-profit business. It's just so easy to forget the rest of the world sometimes, if I'm honest, and forget like the reality of the majority of people in the globe. And for me, I think one of the most impactful things has been, I mean, we're on calls even still for the last like 4 or 5 years. We're on calls like 2 to 3 times a week and talking about this content and these families and this work. And honestly, it's kept me really grounded, and it's kept my head in the place that I want it to be, where I'm remembering the rest of the world. I'm remembering like what, you know, the challenges that a lot of my brothers and sisters globally are facing, and the hard circumstances that are so real for so many people. And so I think for me, it's been just really, really grounding, and just keeping where my head and my heart and my soul in a place where I'm constantly thinking about this stuff, and forced to remember the things that are important to the heart of the Father. And so, yeah.
Good answer. Lance?
Yeah, I think for me, we're in a war. We're in a spiritual battle on earth right now. And it's real. And there's people starving, and there's people in poverty, and there's kids in poverty, spiritually and physically. And we have a choice. We can either we can either be in the arena and look down at the floor as a spectator, or we can get down on the ground and start fighting. And I'm just in. I am all in to the end for eternity. Praise God. And you guys are too.
God, for both of you, for serving God's beloved poor.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end than that. And Lance, thank you for your passion. Thank you for your commitment. Jenn, thank you for who you are. Thank you for all that you have invested into this project. And what a joy and a gift to do life together with both of you. And so we are in as well, and not just in for the mission, but also we really do want to do everything possible to help this message, important message, reach a lot of people. So we'll look forward to the follow-up steps, and we are so grateful that you have spent this time, not just with us, but writing this book that I believe is going to impact so many.